From our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., it's Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett, CEO for Brand Builder and creator of Tuesday Branding. Welcome to today's show. So, Akia, what's new?
Hey, it's Akia Garnett, your host for Kickfannie's Big Thinking, and your host for Tuesday Branding with Akia Garnett. You can find out all about the shows that we have on Tuesday Branding at AkiaGarnett.com. You can listen direct to all the Kickfannie Big Thinking shows at Kickfannie.com. I'm so excited this week for a variety of things. As many people know and have been celebrating with me, I was voted number 64 in the top 100 marketeers to follow on Twitter. It's been an amazing accomplishment for me to reach in my career. As you know, there are over 261 monthly users on Twitter and over 600 million subscribers on Twitter. I was able to make it to number 64 on the top 100 marketeers. Huge thing in my world in marketing and branding. Really excited. Thank you to Evan Carmichael for publishing that list. He takes so much time to compile these lists. It's based on retweets and the number of original retweets, which really weighs heavily in on that whole equation. I'm appreciative and honored. I have lots of people who are asking me if I'm going to go to get higher. Am I going to strive to get higher? I'm just going to keep doing what I do. If I make it to a higher number, I'll be grateful, but I'm excited about 64. I'm celebrating number 64. And again, thank you so much to everybody who's been in support of my brands and all the things that I've been doing on social media. So here's what's new. Chiquita Brands International has decided to sell. Amazing. And if you've been following this brand, then you know that they were on Undercover Boss on the Oprah Winfrey Network. And they have, had their CEO go on, and he did some little finagling there in the brand, going in a little secret covert operation to find some inefficiencies in the brand. Of course he did. They, of course, pulled some of those out as highlights in the closing of the show. Did some amazing work on the Oprah Winfrey Network. I just appreciate all of the programming that they put forth on that show. Undercover Boss teaches a lot of business information. Lots of great shows out there for CEOs if you're interested in finding ways to maximize efficiencies within your brand. Chiquita has agreed to sell for $742 million in their buyout to a Brazilian orange juice maker. And this is going to be a firm to watch to see how they are able to leverage this in the marketplace. I myself must admit that I do enjoy a good banana. And so I'm excited to see what's going to be next when it comes to the produce market and this really heavy hitter. Now, today's show has a super heavy hitter. It's an amazing, super bright, intelligent, smart woman. And her name is J.J. Sherman. J.J. Sherman has been with the top law firms, okay? If the name Sullivan and Cromwell makes sense to you, then you know what I mean. If the name Latham and Watkins out of LA makes any sense to you, then you know what I mean. She's done some great work, some great things in commercial real estate and corporate law. She's now heading up her own firm, J.J. Sherman Law Firm, and she's working in this exciting area of commercial real estate, working with some lifestyle brands and fashion brands and helping them to make big deals so that one day you are driving past a wonderful retail establishment and are able to go in and patronize some of the clients that she actually helped establish their storefronts there. Big deal. And some of that work, has to get done. As you can imagine, with the Chiquita deal, that had a lot of legal work done in the backgrounds. And same thing when it comes to our guest today. She does a lot of work in the background so that you and I can enjoy some of the things that we're able to enjoy as consumers and even business owners. So without further ado, I want to introduce to some and reacquaint with others, none other than attorney at law, J.J. Sherman. Hello, J.J. How are you?
Hi, Akia. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Welcome to Kickfannie's Big Thinking.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Oh, my gosh. JJ, first of all, help us understand how you were able to land those great positions at not one, but two top law firms, Sullivan and Cromwell and Latham and Watkins. What was that all about?
I did very well in law school, and I was very lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. And I chose Sullivan and Cromwell because my antitrust professor told me that S&C was doing the Microsoft antitrust deal and that I'd be a fool not to go there. And I got there and I just loved it. I loved doing all of these high-profile commercial real estate and corporate transactions, both domestic and international deals ranging in the $100 billion to $1 or $2 billion range. And it was thrilling every minute of the ride. With Latham, when I was in Los Angeles, I also wanted to be part of those big-ticket deals, the ones that were more West Coast related, a lot of them Las Vegas real estate transactions.
Awesome. And, some of the work that you do, if not majority of it, tends to be behind the scenes. Help people understand what your role looks like and when you're actually involved in the process, and when I'd say your climax is within that process, and how you sort of exit out or play a lesser role, even though I'm thinking you're still involved with your clients well after they've established the actual storefronts.
You are right. I am a behind-the-scenes player, and legal is best done when it's behind the scenes. I really love to be involved as early as possible in a deal. When a client is thinking about doing a deal, I love to be part of the planning stage, to be able to provide advice ahead of time so that they can structure the deal in an effective and efficient way. And then when the deal is actually being negotiated, of course, that's my most active time. But a lot of times, even after a deal has been signed, there can be hiccups along the way, and that's where I can add even better value to sort of help them get to the end game, get to the finish line.
Wow, and so when you mention multi-billion-dollar deals, I mean, billion, first of all, million is a lot for some people to grasp. Billion just goes over everybody's head. I know. It's it's that thing out there. We know what it is when we hear it, but we really don't know what it is when we see it. So what do you mean by multi-billion-dollar deals? How does that actually look when it comes to what we see manifested in the marketplace?
Well, generally it has to do with very large real estate transactions. When I was at places like Sullivan and Cromwell and Latham and Watkins, they would be handling major real estate, landmark properties in New York City, historic, iconic properties in Las Vegas, and or perhaps purchases of portfolios of properties that would be all across America, and so the deals would be really large.
Oh, wow. And so how does that make you feel? Do you have any, does that create any anxiety in you as an attorney having to deal with major transactions like that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's absolutely thrilling. At the end of the day, the work that you do, it's the same deal whether it's $100 million deal or $1 million deal or $1 billion deal. You still have to put in the same legwork. You still have to think about the same issues. It's just really fun to be able to point at a building and say, "Yeah, I worked on that deal." To walk down the street or to read in the newspaper, "Yeah, I worked on that deal."
Yeah, and you get to do that in some of the coolest cities in the nation. LA, New York, Washington, D.C. You've chosen the best cities to do business.
It's true. Well, these days, when I walk down the street, I'll point out to a store and say, "Yes, that's my client," and I helped them open that store at this landmark location, and look how cool their flagship store looks.
Yeah. Now, when you're working on them, you see the plans, you see the blueprints and all of that, architectural drawings and so forth. But does it still give you some excitement when you actually get to see it in true form?
Even more so. I think that there's something very lovely about having something tangible to be able to look at.
Well, look, from my past discussions with you, you had some choices. You're a smart cookie. So you could have chosen any area of, the marketplace in terms of how you're going to spend and how you've been spending your career. At one point, I know you said you considered being a translator for United Nations. You could have been involved in Broadway. You chose law. How did you make that decision?
It was really a gamble more than anything else. I spent a summer abroad at Cambridge University and decided while I was hanging out in Cambridge that I was going to try my hand at law school. And within the first week of law school, I realized how much I loved it. And from then on, I just continued down this path, and I've loved it ever since.
Mm-hmm. And as a youth, did you think perhaps that you had the mindset of a legalese, or what led you to even consider pursuing law school?
I was a history major in college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there was a positive correlation there in terms of being able to dig down into the facts and just get into the nitty-gritty of detailing.
That's true, but at the end of the day, what keeps me here is that I really love working with clients. I really love helping them grow their business, and I really love problem solving with them.
Awesome.
I love it when they call me up and say, JJ, we've got this deal, but we've got this issue. Help me solve it.
And I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things that I've appreciated about you is that you are able to pull out some real tangible tips for people that they can take away from any discussion that you have regarding law. And this whole conversation that we're having today is around the importance of being nimble. Now, when I think of nimble, and when people in the marketing field or branding field think of being nimble, it's more used as a marketing strategy or a buzzword in any branding campaign that shows that we're able to produce with the fewest amount of resources in the fewest number of minutes or hours possible, and at the most affordable price. But when you're talking about being nimble and the importance of that, you're talking about it from a legal perspective. And so I wanted to talk about some of the tips that you are able to provide, some quick tips for people so that they can walk away from this conversation knowing, here's what I can do immediately to create a nimble operation, but also to make sure that all the things that we are doing are being documented and presented before the people in the audiences that we serve, so that we can take great advantage of this brand that we're building.
That is an excellent idea. When I think about being nimble, I actually don't approach it from a sales perspective at all. Of course, because I'm a lawyer, I approach it from a legal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, to stay nimble, it's best to stay nimble by contract.
Mm-hmm.
A well-negotiated contract gives you and your company the flexibility to terminate your contract if the deal that you've contemplated just isn't working out, or if you decide that you want to do business in a different direction. Many highly successful companies enter into a new market, and they expect that what has worked for them in the past is going to work for them equally well in the new market. And that assumption is also made by entrepreneurs who maybe they've created and sold their first company, and they assume that what's worked for them in the past will work for them now. That's not always the case. I think that Michael Miller on your Big Thinking interview touched on that point, and he touched on it really well. It doesn't always work out based on what has worked out in the past. It may take time to figure out what does and doesn't work out in the market, but as soon as you do figure it out, the first question you always ask your lawyer is, how do I get out of the contract?
Yep.
Can I terminate? I get calls on a weekly basis saying, I've got this contract, it's not working out, or we'd like to take the company in a different direction, and how can I terminate? Can you help me negotiate a termination? And this is where a well-negotiated termination clause in your contract can prove really useful to stay nimble. Look at your termination rights ahead of time.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. So 2 things, folks. Number 1, we did interview Michael Miller a few weeks ago. He's amazing, and he's a former chief counsel for ING Direct in the Netherlands. He also did some work for ING in the States on their corporate counsel, and also for Tata Consulting. You can find that show at Kickfannie.com. Thank you so much for mentioning that interview, JJ. Also, number 2, JJ, because you mentioned that you get calls on a weekly basis on how can I get out of this contract, there may be some folks listening who's got that same challenge right now. Do you offer some quick way for people to interact with you just to get an answer from you on, is it possible that I can get out of this contract?
I'm always happy to offer a 30-minute consultation to understand the business plan or the business issue, and to determine if it's possible to provide legal assistance.
All right, so if you're on and you're listening and you've got a real challenge and you're just, scratching your head on how can I get out of this? This isn't working out the way we thought it was going to work out, and you just need some quick legal counsel on, what your ability is to get out of it. Give JJ Sherman a call or check her out. JJ, what's your phone number?
213-984-1806.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll give that information again at the end of the show, but we're going to get back to our list. This amazing, which I think is an amazing list of things you can do right now to better leverage all of the things that you're doing in business from a legal perspective. So you were talking about being nimble by contract.
That's right. And there's, of course, the exit strategy, which, is the termination clause, but there's the flip side of that, which is keeping yourself flexible, keeping yourself nimble to be able to take that great business opportunity where it comes your way. And that's where assignment clauses really come in handy. A great example of this is a private equity investment in your company or the sale of your company altogether. When either of these occur, the lawyers always review the agreements to determine which consents, if any, are required from a contractual counterparties to consummate the private equity infusion or the sale. And the last thing that you want is some third party holding up your equity infusion or your sale because your assignment clause isn't, it doesn't give you enough freedom, and you have to go back to the third party and get their consent. So, look at your termination clauses, look at your assignment clauses so that you have freedom to do what you need to do to be able to grab that business opportunity as you want to grow.
Awesome. That sounds great. Now, okay, so we've gone through tip number 1. It's stay nimble by contract. JJ just gave us some great advice on that. Got another tip, JJ?
Yes. Work with your legal team. And specifically, establish a semi-annual meeting with your legal team, either your in-house counsel or your outside counsel or both, and really let them understand what your business is and what your business plan is. And when the plan changes, let them know that it's changing. When you have these annual meetings, sit down with them, create an agenda for the meeting, and let them know what's coming down the pipeline for the next 12 to 24 months and what your business goals are for the near and long-term future. I regularly sit down with clients and ask them, what's coming down the pipeline? What do you see for the next 12 to 24 months? What goals do you want to reach for the near and long-term future? This way, when deals do come in, I'm able to create enough flexibility in those contracts to be able to give them, to be able to reach those goals.
That's awesome. Hey, JJ, can they reach out to you also to get some tips on how to create that agenda so that they're maximizing the time that they're going to be spending with their legal counsel?
Of course.
Awesome. There you go, guys. So there's another reason for you to contact JJ. Let's move on to tip number 3, assuming there is one.
Yes. Part of staying nimble is recognizing that you can do everything right and things still won't go as planned. And so you want to have extra cash reserves on hand for legal. And this includes having cash reserves on hand to deal with a serious lawsuit that's filed against the company or a lawsuit that's threatened against the company. In that situation, having a great team of advisors can prove really useful to address a crisis. PJ Crowley, who is on your BIGThinking program, was terrific. And he talks a lot about crisis management.
Yep. PJ Crowley is amazing. He was on our show last week. Amazing assistant secretary for public affairs with the U.S. Department of State. He's also doing some great work over at the George Washington University. You can listen to that show at Kickfannie.com. Thanks again, JJ, for listening to our wonderful interviews with heavy hitters in the marketplace. And you've done your homework as an attorney. There's no surprise.
Oh, we attorneys specialize in doing our diligence.
That's just great to know. So you say extra cash reserves. To people, they don't know, how much that looks like on average. I would imagine that it has to do with a percentage of your annual revenue. I mean, how do you know how much money to have on reserve? What should be a best practice or some sort of a number that people should strive toward having?
I don't know that I can necessarily throw out a number today, but it's cash reserves to cover 2 different contingencies in my mind. One would be litigation costs. And the other would be termination fees. Sometimes in order to get out of a contract or in order to get the consent of a party, you're going to have to pay a fee. And that fee is going to be based, sometimes it is going to, if your attorney has done a great job or your broker has done a great job, they will have pre-negotiated that number in advance. So you know what that contingency fee is and you put it in your reserve. Sometimes you don't have a set number and then it's a matter of negotiating it with your counterparty, and you just don't know. So again, some things can be planned, some things can't be planned. It's hard to throw out an exact number. It really depends on your business and what your contracts look like.
Wow. Well, there you have it. Just having that cash reserve available for legal purposes.
Yes, expect the unexpected expense.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
It's going to come up. It's going to come up in a lawsuit. It's going to come up because you've decided that you want to take the company in a different direction and you want to get out of a contract. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to pay to get out of a contract.
Yeah. Yeah. And how does all this play into insurance?
Well, the next tip would be to have a really great insurance policy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there is a casualty, but more often than not, there might be a litigation. And sometimes having a great insurance policy is the way to go. You definitely want to make sure that you have a great insurance policy to cover general liability, to cover, obviously, workers' comp, which is required by law. If you are in any way involved in the online environment, cyber risk insurance is imperative. And of course, if you have employees, an employer's risk liability insurance is really crucial. But what is a great insurance policy? People always ask me. It's something that gives you sufficient coverage to cover not just the claims that you might pay out, but also the litigation costs, and doesn't have exclusions that would really prevent you from taking advantage of the policy at the end of the day. One important point is to really look at your policy and understand when you need to make a claim. Because if you only have a limited period of time to make your claim and you want to catch that period, otherwise it doesn't matter how great your policy is, you won't have the coverage.
Wow. So who do you spend time with? Aside from working directly with your insurance company, is there a third party you'd recommend folks spend time with, understanding what they have in their insurance clauses?
Ask your lawyers. Lawyers will read your policies cover to cover for you.
There you have it, folks. So give your insurance policy over to your attorneys and let them take a look at it and tell you where there are opportunities to beef that thing up. And better yet, call JJ. You'll help them with that too, JJ?
Always.
Okay, JJ. Now you have to stay abreast of all of the great things that are taking place in the real estate world. We had our terrific hit in the marketplace. It affected commercial law and commercial real estate as well as the housing industry. How are you staying on top of all of the developing news and, of course, some of the rebounds, the positive rebounds that the market is taking place? How do you stay abreast of everything?
I do it in many different ways. One of the best ways to do it is to ask my clients how they're doing, ask fellow practitioners what they're seeing in the market. I'm part of Commercial Real Estate Women, and I get a really good sense of what's going on in the market in local markets in New York City and Los Angeles, as well as nationally through Commercial Real Estate Women. And I am a avid reader of the New York Post Wednesday real estate section. Have been for years. Years ago when I was at Sullivan and Cromwell, I read the Wednesday morning real estate section, saw that a landmark deal was about to begin. They had just announced it, and I walked into my signing partner and said, I really want to work on this deal. And, the next day I was on it.
Wow.
More recently, I actually reconnected with a college classmate who I didn't realize was in the same field as me. He's also in commercial real estate in the retail world because he was a bold name in the New York Post.
That's just great. That's awesome. So there you have it. You're pulling right from the headlines in the Wednesday paper, the New York Post paper. That's just great. And what a great way to respond to immediate opportunities on the surface than to just take yourself into your signing partner's office when you were at S&C and say, I want to be on this and actually be on it the next day. That's a go-getter if I've ever heard one. That's just awesome. Now, did you have any other tips for our listeners, JJ?
Well, yeah, the last tip I would have is to have a go-ready strategy in place to reach out to your business partners when you need to make a change of direction in your business. And usually this comes up in the context of when you need to terminate a contract with them. To have a message in place so that they understand you're not terminating the relationship, you're just terminating this one contract.
Have you seen examples where companies did have that go-ready strategy and it worked out very well in their favor?
Yes, I've negotiated several waivers and several terminations where it has been conveyed to the business relationship, to the other side that, you know, we just need to terminate this relationship, or we just need a waiver for this one opportunity, but we want to do a lot more deals with you. We're in growth mode, but in order to grow, we need this from you. So let's make it work.
Okay. And then what about companies that didn't have that go-ready strategy that you talk about with partners?
Well, the problem is that if you don't have a strategy in place, then it takes a lot more time, and you might lose the business opportunity because you don't have the lines of communication set up. You know, it's so important to have an open line of communication, keeping your other side informed as things are happening, so that they can make their own switches in their business plan too, so that they can adjust.
Okay.
And there are delays. Frankly, there are delays in getting what you want to get done, or potentially you could end up in breach of contract, which no one really wants to do.
No, nobody wants that. Now, you have a presence in LA, you've got a presence in New York City, and also in Washington, D.C. How do you time split? How do you give attention to all three of those major markets?
I work with clients who are doing business in California. I work with clients who are doing business in New York, and I just essentially work on whatever time the clients are on.
Do you have a preference over those cities, JJ?
I love all my clients equally.
Okay, that's a safe response. Now, my producers, they make me ask this question of all our guests. And if you've heard our previous shows, as you have, then you know that the bucket list question is coming your way. Tell us something that's on your bucket list, JJ.
Thank you, Akia. I'm a major fan of musical theater, and one of my favorites is My Fair Lady. I would really like to attend Ladies' Day at the Royal Ascot races in England.
Wow. Now, I didn't see that coming. Tell us why.
I've been a fan of that scene ever since I was 5 years old, and I still follow it every June when it occurs. Really?
Now, what about it intrigues you so?
Oh, I think I think it's just a really fascinating event.
That's amazing. I hope you get to do that. Do you have plans for when you might get to partake in that, JJ?
Well, who knows? Maybe this June.
Hey, sounds like an opportunity that you might be able to pounce upon.
That's right.
That's just great. You know, I have thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. I thank you for pulling out such great tips for people to use immediately within their business, especially our listeners who are CEOs. They're the upper echelons of their industries, and they really need bite-sized information that they can use right away. And I think that the tips that you've provided, such as staying nimble by contract, and the other tips that you mentioned regarding working with your legal team and having that agenda available and ready, and having those cash reserves and a great insurance policy and understanding what great insurance policy means is so very, very important. And then your last tip which was having that Go Ready strategy for your partners. It just makes so much sense, and it is something that can get lost when we are in the process of making really big transactions and big deals take place. And so I thank you again for sharing such great tips. I ask you to please provide your contact information again for folks to get in touch with you, maybe sign up for one of those consultations that you have.
Yes, my direct line is 213-984-1806. My website is www.jjshermanlaw.com. I'm also reachable by LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JJ. There you have it, folks. JJ, not Cromwell, JJ Sherman, who has done some amazing work, has worked for Sullivan and Cromwell, has also worked for Latham and Watkins, and has done some amazing deals in commercial real estate and corporate law. Worldwide, has gained tremendous recognition, is a very, very bright woman, and I hope that you find an opportunity to reach out to her to talk about the opportunities that you have from a legal perspective to create a nimble operation. I thank you again, JJ, for your time, and we look forward to catching up with you in the future.
It's been so much fun. Thank you so much, Akia.
Awesome. Find out more about Kickfannie's Big Thinking at Kickfannie.com. And thank you for listening to Tuesday Branding with Akia Garnett. We've got lots of shows that we do on Tuesday, starting with the Akia Garnett Show at 10 a.m. And you can find out more about that at AkiaGarnett.com. And don't forget to join us on Tuesday nights for My Brand Chat and iBrand Chat. They're on Twitter every week, 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
You've been listening to Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett, a Kickfannie production. Akia Garnett is a Kickfannie.com contributor, and she's CEO for Brand Builder and a national columnist for Minority Business Entrepreneur magazine, a leading source in supplier diversity and inclusion. Be sure to join Akia for Tuesday Branding on social media when she brings news from across all platforms for small business owners and entrepreneurs all day, starting with the Akia Garnett Show, 10 a.m. Eastern, and Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett at 6 p.m. Eastern, ending with My Brand Chat on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. See the full Tuesday lineup at Kickfannie.com and AkiaGarnett.com. And we'll see you next week on Kickfannie's Big Thinking with Akia Garnett.